I appreciate you being here. We're going to share a little bit about homeschooling and the advantages of homeschooling. I'm sure most everybody has heard the term homeschooling, and you may even have formulated some opinion about homeschoolers based on perhaps some people you know or some other maybe inaccurate information. So I'm hoping I can share some things with you that'll help you understand about homeschoolers and the advantages. My goal is to really persuade you all to believe that homeschooling is a valid method for educating your children. Okay, I don't advocate that we do away with institutional school systems, but I am advocating that homeschooling is a viable option for educating children. Let me start by giving you a little bit of background of me and my experience and our family's experience. I went through the public school system, graduated through the public school system, and my wife went through a private school, and she graduated private school. Our oldest son spent several years at both public and private schools, finally graduated, and our youngest three, we have been homeschooling for the past 5 years. So we feel like we have a pretty good perspective of the different school systems and the methods of educating the children. All right, so let me start with the advantages. What are the advantages? Since we don't have a whole lot of time, I got to focus, and there's so many areas of sharing the resources and the advantages and all these topics about schools and methods of teaching and all that. I'm going to focus on two: socialization and academics. Okay, socialization is always a big topic when it comes to homeschoolers, and the question is, do they get do they get social activities, and are they socialized, if you will? Okay, Steve Moidozo outlines in his 10 Myths of Socialization, which he wrote an article, a book, and did a speech on. I'm going to hit on a few of those. Myth number 1, classroom socialization is normal. The disadvantage of students in an institutional setting is that they're mostly segregated with same-age peers for most of the day, especially in the younger years. They stay with that same-age peers. Homeschool advantage is you have opportunities to interact with multiple age groups through various venues on a daily basis, through homeschool co-ops, through other community-based activities that homeschoolers tend to do for homeschooling or educating their children. Next myth, classroom socialization prepares children for the real world. Well, the disadvantage is the institutional type students are typically confined to a classroom, and they're not getting out into the world. Homeschool advantage is that homeschoolers adopt that community-based educational experience while in the real world. So whether it's going out shopping, whether it's taking the experience of going to work and going to other places, they're experiencing the real world and educating their children as they're doing it. Another myth: classroom socialization will help my child get along with others. Well, the disadvantage is social behaviors are taught by same-age peers that haven't yet learned themselves, whereas homeschool advantage is it's guided by parents through selected social and community activities with groups of all ages. One note for us was that we've had a lot of people tell us that our kids seem to be able to carry on conversation with a lot of different age groups, where sometimes institutional, and I know this is stereotypical, but sometimes institutional students, because they spend so much time with their same age peers, they have a harder time carrying on a conversation with adults. All right, classroom socialization doesn't really affect my child because I'm still in charge. Well, the disadvantage is in institutional, children learn many things from same-age peers that in many cases they're not ready to learn, or their parents don't want them to learn just yet. The homeschool advantage is you can teach specific social skills at desired times because you really are in charge throughout the whole process. Classroom socialization will help develop my child's self-image. Well, it will definitely develop your child's self-image, but the disadvantage is it might develop their self-image in a way that you hadn't really hoped for because of the pecking order that goes on with schools. Homeschool advantage is you can help mold your child's self-image through the process. There's a lot more discussion, and haven't even expanded on socialization, but let me jump into academics. It's another big concern when it comes to discussing homeschoolers. Cynthia Tobias, in her book The Way They Learn, describes various learning styles. Learning styles is a big key. because the disadvantage is in institutional type schools, limited opportunities to teach to multiple learning styles. Whereas homeschool advantage is you have the ability to understand your child's learning style and teach accordingly. Audrey Gray, the second one is teaching styles. Audrey Gray summarizes her master's thesis in an article titled Constructivist Teaching and Learning, which is a method that, by the way, has been used by homeschoolers for a long time and now is being adopted by institutional schools. We don't have time to get into what that method is, but the disadvantage is this. Information that is being taught in a classroom setting is passively received and is not optimally retained. Therefore, it provides what we would consider a subpar education. Homeschool advantage uses the constructivist teaching, which fosters critical thinking and creates motivated and independent learners. Therefore, elevates the educational experience so you can become an independent learner throughout your college career and throughout your life. And the last one is academic achievement. This is probably one of the biggest ones. There are numerous statistics and studies on the academic achievements of homeschoolers. A study conducted by Dr. Brian Ray entitled Strengths of Their Own, Homeschoolers Across America demonstrates several surprising statistics. Homeschoolers across the nation scored in the high 80th percentile compared to the national averages. Perhaps one of the most revealing statistics in the study was related to race. There was no significant difference in the scores from homeschoolers regardless of their race. In other words, if minorities homeschool, their test scores were up there even with white test scores that were homeschooled. Whereas in the public school system, there was a huge disparity. In fact, I'll show you with this slide. This slide shows the chart. And as you can see here, homeschoolers, whites and minorities, they scored basically the same. In the Virginia public schools system, there was a huge disparity between white and minorities in reading, same thing with math. So the disadvantage is higher probability of inadequate education and lower test scores, especially for minority students. Whereas the homeschool advantage is a higher probability of superior education and better test scores, especially for minority students. So I know that's a lot of information. It's not really as much as what it could be, but because there's a lot of different advantages for homeschooling, and I hope just by sharing this much information, you now understand that homeschooling is a valid option for educating your children.